The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any radio station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. The following program is a product of Causeway LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.
Government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused radio show that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
Welcome, America, and welcome, planet Earth. That's right. No matter where you are on this hunk of rock, or what you're doing, or who you are, I want to welcome every single one of you Bitcoin lovers, newbies, and experts. You're now listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, and yes, we are. If you were just wondering, or maybe you heard the rumor, we are America's Bitcoin-focused radio show, and it's going to be quite a show today, just like all of them. But this show, we're going to be diving into a topic that is fairly new. It's a niche space or niche part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. But what's great about this show is you're always going to learn something new. Whether that's money, liberty, history, technology, energy, we're going to bring all of these topics. We're going to wrap them up, put a nice little bow on it, and hopefully you can understand and digest it all. And that's kind of my goal, is I want to educate in a way that makes sense. But really, I mean, if look at the last 6 months, and if you've been paying attention to the Bitcoin space, we've seen this real emergence of some new developments that, quite honestly, I'm still learning myself and will continue to learn. But most of us are familiar with the term NFTs, which is also known as non-fungible tokens. And even if you don't know how they work, we've all kind of heard about how JPEGs and art and things like it can now be verified and original on the blockchain. Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about how these types of things are now happening on Bitcoin's blockchain, a phenomenon known as Ordinals, Inscriptions, and even things like BRC20 tokens. You may have heard ERC20 tokens that are on Ethereum, but BRC20? What does that mean? Well, the question I'm going to ask today is, should we care? How is this all unfolding? And will this new niche change Bitcoin, its direction, or its future? And we're going to unpack all of this with a very special guest that I love having on. He's been on before, but before I bring him to the front and center, I need to give a warm and wonderful shout out to Brian LaRue, my producer. He has done a phenomenal job of putting together that awesome intro, the soundtrack, just the whole vibe of the show, really. If you have a product or are you a musician? Are you creating a podcast? Do you have a radio show? Maybe you want to create some kind of sound bed, maybe kind of some kind of sound effects or whatever you need to do. He's the guy to go see. So go check him out at beyondyouproductions.com. He can make some really cool stuff for you. All right. Well, as promised, today on the line, without any further delay, we have a regular contributor, a resident Bitcoin miner. He's our resident Bitcoin miner, but now he is a major Ordinal influencer. His name is Charlie Spears. Charlie, welcome back to the show, my friend. But, for our listeners who are listening for the first time, who are unfamiliar with you, what you're doing, I know that's kind of evolved recently. Please share with everyone who you are and what you do in your own words.
Gosh, Matt, it's funny. We've been doing the show for like years now. And I've been introduced as like the Bitcoin mining guy, and I still am. Like, I and my partners with Nakamoto, we still deploy Bitcoin mines. We deployed a big one last month. Been doing that for years. I've been your resident like Bitcoin guru, as you say. But what's interesting is I am just generally interested in all things Bitcoin. And what happened about 6 to 7 months ago is I kind of just got involved in a young open source project based upon a very simple idea. And then that project kind of caught fire. And that has spawned what this trend is, which is ordinals and inscriptions, or as some people say, NFTs on Bitcoin. And that has consumed my life. In fact, so much that I side projects that I helped start turned into whole companies, and I've been hired in addition to my existing Bitcoin mining partnership Nakamoto. I've been hired onto the second largest Bitcoin mining pool in North America, named Luxor, to lead kind of, or to help them run a kind of like Ordinals labs type R&D team. And so we have a site called Ordinal Hub, which is kind of an ecosystem tracker. But man, it's been a wild ride. It is very weird in that I'm experiencing a bit of a career evolution, not a career change, a career evolution where my love and focus on Bitcoin mining really pairs well for this new world of ordinals. And I think the word I'm going to use is block space innovation. So that's where I am at.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because I was down at Miami and you got to be on one of the stages at the Bitcoin conference talking about some of this stuff. And this is where I kind of took some of my notes. And, I'm just so happy to see all of this unfolding for you. And I know it's going to go and continue to evolve even more. But, speaking of evolution, we've talked about Bitcoin, we've talked about ordinals and inscriptions here, but explain to the audience what this is really all about. Why has it picked up so much steam, in your opinion?
It's going to be hard to be concise, and I think the longer we talk about this, the more we'll be able to flesh it out. But so, like, Bitcoin is a simple idea. It's a network that comes to consensus upon state, upon where the Bitcoin is, and that's really powerful. We've talked about the Byzantine generals problem. We've talked about energy turning into money, and money being kind of this basis upon which humans coordinate. But what's interesting is Bitcoin as a network actually has other features to it and components. You can put information on Bitcoin. We haven't really done this a whole lot at scale. We've not really used what I was like the space for information in the Bitcoin blocks. And so we call this block space. And so what I'm seeing is that when we start putting things that that might just be like JPEGs or images or things that look like NFTs, those are going onto Bitcoin's block space, and they're paying money. They're paying Bitcoin to be integrated onto the Bitcoin blockchain. And so even though these might be like right now kind of like dumb JPEGs, if you will, I think there's a bigger narrative going on, which is we're actually using Bitcoin for different things which aren't necessarily money. And I think this has deep implications because one of the big narratives that I believe is that Bitcoin is money, but it's also many other things. And we are so early in this story. We're 14 years into this grand experiment of Bitcoin that we're still discovering that it can do certain things. And I think this is kind of one of the beginnings of that kind of trend of using Bitcoin for a multitude of things, and money being the core thing that holds it all together.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like when the internet first came out, people just kind of had this idea that we're going to file share and send messages back and forth, and now you got we're doing this show over the internet. You video chat all the time. I mean, you're shopping on the internet all the time. And so it's like it's going to be interesting to see how the Bitcoin network evolves, what gets built on top of it, the different layers. But I gotta ask you personally, did you kind of see this coming as far as the evolution? Because I know when you're saying information on Bitcoin's blockchain, I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto had a special message in the first block. So is that kind of a force?
This is interesting. I've been in Bitcoin for a long time, so I've seen a lot of different narratives come and go. And the strongest narrative about what Bitcoin was the past 3 or 4 years has been Bitcoin is the hardest money. And I think it is. I think it is unequivocally the hardest money. But I think there's other parts of Bitcoin which are not really fully explored, either from a technical standpoint or just from the ecosystem adopting them. And this is one of those things. And I've actually always kind of been like this. I kind of always call myself like a Bitcoin futurist or accelerationist or mystic, in that I believe there's a lot of different things that Bitcoin can do, and I myself don't know them. It's very hard to I would not have predicted ordinals and inscriptions. However, I would have predicted this idea that Bitcoin is going to be used for way more things than money. And specifically, one of those things is going to be Bitcoin has information and data that goes on it. And I think, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how it's going to be used, but now it's so clear to me that we're in this new era where it will be used. And that's been a little controversial. I think that it has generated some good controversy and some bad controversy. But what I think is that I think it's important to understand that this is a component of Bitcoin, and we have to figure out what this part of Bitcoin should look like. And so I'm in the camp of like, I'm going to build cool stuff. I'm going to build upon this thesis. If you work for a Bitcoin mining company or especially a Bitcoin pool, this is probably one of the most transformative events in your company's history. And so I'm now work with a Bitcoin mining company and a Bitcoin mining pool. And so I'm kind of at the crossroads of all of these narratives here.
That's very interesting. I mean, and that's right. There's a lot of narratives, a lot of lingo, a lot of new things to understand as this evolves. And people have heard of NFTs and they have a loose understanding of what that is. However, and I don't know if this is possible, but how would you compare and contrast the lingo here? Like, what's the difference between an inscription, an ordinal, and a BRC20 token and an NFT?
That's a really good question. I will start with what an NFT is. So you may have heard of people say they like crypto or they like NFTs. And NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are most broadly understood as if you have a blockchain like Ethereum or Solana, this is a, quote, smart application layer or smart contract blockchain. And on that blockchain, you can have basically titles or deeds or tokens which reference digital assets which are not held on the chain itself. So that is, it's kind of like you have a Google Docs or a Dropbox server where you have an image. And then you have a blockchain like Ethereum where you have a token which points to that image. Now that's pretty cool. People would sell those back and forth. But what the important thing is that if you own the token on Ethereum, you don't actually own the image. You're just referencing the image on someone else's server like Google or Dropbox's servers. So I always felt that NFTs, as we understood them, never really made a lot of sense long term, because one of the core narratives that we focus on is self-custody. Own your stuff. And so on Bitcoin, we actually have an interesting mechanic happening. When a Bitcoin block is produced, there's all the transactions in that block, but then there's also space for data and information in that block. And we've not really utilized this for whatever reason. And you can put up to 4 megabytes. That's not a lot. But what we're doing on Bitcoin is we're actually putting the actual files themselves, the JPEG, which on Ethereum, you just own kind of the title or deed to. But on Bitcoin, the actual information itself goes on the Bitcoin blockchain and is distributed. A copy of that is distributed to all Bitcoin nodes all across the world. And then the way you own that information, which we call an inscription, is we associate that inscription with a specific Satoshi, the smallest denomination of a Bitcoin, a SAT, if you will. And that SAT, we give all the Satoshis numbers. And when you give a SAT a number, you call it an ordinal. If you're a mathematician, you know that ordinal numbers are simply numbers that have an order to them. So we bring this colloquial term, ordinals, and we just call Satoshis that have numbers ordinals. And if you own that Satoshi, that ordinal, you own the inscription that is associated with that. And so that is the mechanism that these are owned and associated.
So an inscription on a Satoshi makes it an ordinal.
An ordinal does not have to have an inscription.
Okay.
An inscription can be attached to an ordinal, or you can have an ordinal not attached to anything. The majority of ordinals, or the majority of Satoshis, will never have inscriptions associated with them.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm still wrapping my mind around it.
Yeah,
right
it's kind of weird. For when I heard about this first time, my mind was, it took me like a couple weeks to wrap my head around it.
But the basic idea here is they're more legitimate versions of NFTs, because you basically you're not just owning a title or a deed, you're actually owning that image, basically, that is then recorded on all the nodes around the world, right?
Pretty much, yeah. The image itself exists. It actually exists on the blockchain that you think it exists on. That's like a revolutionary concept. The thing that then becomes kind of voluntary consensus is the Bitcoin network itself does not enforce the rule set of associating an ordinal with an inscription. And so that becomes an additional consensus. So everybody agrees, well, we're going to add this extra rule on top of Bitcoin, which doesn't affect Bitcoin, how it works on the base layer. We're going to add this extra rule, and we're going to agree that they all are associated with these specific Satoshis or ordinals. And that is kind of where the voluntary association comes in. So far, it seems to be very, very strong. And the longer that it goes without being fundamentally challenged, the longer it's embedded into tooling, the ecosystem, and consensus.
Well, and we've got a couple minutes before we got to go to break, but I do want to dive into this question. Can you talk about, more about this idea of rare Satoshis or rare sats? Because it sounds like Bitcoin's kind of becoming like gold. I mean, in gold, you've got your regular spot bullion. Then you've got these collectible gold coins that have some kind of history or rarity to them that people are willing to pay a larger premium. How is this now happening with Bitcoin? Are you telling me that I can actually find some kind of Satoshi that was used in some kind of unique transaction in the history of Bitcoin and add a premium to it?
Yes, that is actually a major business activity of mine and Luxor's right now. Your analogy, Matt, is great. You have gold. It's all fungible. There's a finite or a close to finite amount of gold or whatever, we talk about on the show. But when you form that gold into special shapes that have historic value, a wedding ring, a sculpture, something in history, a special type of gold coin, we assign a premium to that, which is beyond simply its weight in gold. And so that is very similar to what happens with Satoshis, where if we say, this Satoshi was actually a Satoshi from the first transaction ever back in 2009, that's really cool. I would love to collect that sat. And so I would like to own a Satoshi from my birthday. That's really cool. I don't know what the actual collector kind of meta, I don't know what people want to collect, but some people have started collecting or buying these, and it's kind of an art to acquire them and distribute them. That's actually where we can talk about in the next segment. Well, one of my favorite things to do is breaking Bitcoin so that we can pull apart and find and hunt these special ordinal Satoshis.
Almost like panning for gold. Is that a good analogy there?
It's so similar. In fact, we actually borrow the exact term. We call it sat panning and sat scanning.
I love it. Well, guys, we have to run to break here real quick. And if your mind is all confused and you've been in Bitcoin for a while, don't worry. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this too. I obviously have not dived deep into this. It's been a fairly new development in the space over the last 6 months or so, maybe further than that. But that's when I really started hearing about it. But I don't want you to go anywhere, because we got more great content with Charlie Spears. And I promise you, we're going to dive deeper into this. We're going to pan for those Satoshis, and we're going to unpack this a little bit more. We will be right back.
Do you have Medicare, and do you use a CPAP machine? This is a national healthcare alert regarding your CPAP supplies. Using a clean CPAP mask and clean supplies is important to staying healthy. The best way to make sure your CPAP equipment is clean is to get new supplies. If you have Medicare, we have great news. Medicare will pay for you to have new clean supplies every 90 days. We'll even do all the paperwork for you to make sure that there's little to no out-of-pocket cost to you. And you don't even have to leave your home. We provide free in-home delivery. So if you're a CPAP user and you have Medicare, staying healthy with new CPAP equipment is easy. Just make this free phone call right now to get started.
Sponsored by Specialty Medical. 800-262-0318. 800-262-0318. 800-262-0318.
What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
In times of economic uncertainty and chaos, your money means nothing. You may not even be able to get it from your bank or ATM. And the money you do have in the stock market will go down and down. What you can bank on is gold and silver. Gold and silver have been a reliable and trusted form of currency for thousands of years. Gold and silver have never been worth zero, and typically gold holds its value during economic turmoil. Call the Gold Hotline now and learn how to protect your money and your assets with gold and silver. And learn how to set up a new IRA or roll over your current one into a gold-backed IRA. Protect your money from the next market crash with gold and silver. Call now for your free gold guide.
800-795-3441. 800-795-3441. 800-795-3441.
And we are back in the saddle. That's right. This is America's Bitcoin-focused radio show. I want to welcome all of you guys, whether you're new to the space, whether you're an expert, maybe you just love Bitcoin. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, where we bring you some exciting and new content every week. At least we try to. I mean, this stuff sometimes goes over my head, so don't feel bad. I'm constantly learning. I'm here in school. I'm in session. I'm in school with you guys, so don't feel bad if some of this stuff goes over your head. But man, we have been having a wonderful conversation with one of my favorite guests, and we're gonna bring him back on here in a minute. But if just so kind of since you might be tuning in for the first time, maybe you just jumped in your car. We've been talking about this new development that in my mind has kind of really taken the scene by fire over the last 6 months, this new emergent and development in the Bitcoin space. It's kind of this new niche that we're talking about inscriptions, ordinals, BRC20 tokens, these new concepts that people are just now wrapping their heads around about how Bitcoin can actually be utilized in the network itself. But most of us have heard of the concept of NFTs or non-fungible tokens. There was a big craze over the last bull market, and so we're gonna see and dive into maybe how all of these new developments may impact Bitcoin and its future. And I've brought a guest on who's been a regular of the show, but he's the perfect guy to bring on because not only is he a Bitcoin miner, but he has somehow found himself evolving or falling into this new niche of the Bitcoin space called Ordinals. And so on the line, we've got Bitcoin miner and major ordinal influencer, Charlie Spears. Charlie, since this is radio and you never know when people are just tuning in, please just real quickly share who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Matt, we've been doing this radio show no matter the price of Bitcoin, whether it's going up or down. We've been doing it for years. And I'm your Bitcoin mining guy. I come on to talk about either just Bitcoin in general or to talk about how me and my partners mine Bitcoin at the well site here in Oklahoma. But lately, I found myself getting into this new thing called ordinals or ordinal theory, and it's actually been one of the bright, exciting things happening in Bitcoin lately. Some people call it NFTs on Bitcoin. I like to say it's like that, but it's even better than that. We call them ordinals and inscriptions. And so I found I've been also hired now by Luxor Mining, the second largest Bitcoin mining pool in North America. And I kind of act on this small kind of labs R&D team to figure out how Luxor can build cool stuff in the ordinals ecosystem.
And the Ordinal Hub is part of Luxor, right?
Ordinal Hub, yes, this website, ordinalhub.com. And it's, if you go to it, it'll look like, a standard NFT tracking website, but it's just for things on Bitcoin. So it's ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin. And that's like a front end, it's like you're gonna track ecosystem prices, everything. But then we actually build a lot of really cool things. There's a lot of B2B or enterprise tooling. If you're listening to this, and you already know what ordinals are. We build custom indexing solutions. We have very sophisticated ways of inscribing these things on chain. But yeah, I'll leave it there. We do some really cool stuff that, like, things that I've been a Bitcoiner for years and never imagined doing.
Well, I couldn't think of somebody better. I mean, your esoteric thinking in Bitcoin, I think, has been very, very spot on, or very appreciated by many people. So I'm very happy to hear this. So, okay, let me dive into this. This is kind of controversial. I mean, this whole episode may be controversial to some Bitcoiners, but this development in the space has maybe caused some division, because many Bitcoin maximalists are not happy that these ordinals and inscriptions and BRC20 token experiments are now part of Bitcoin's blockchain. What do you say about all that?
So this is, I think it's interesting. I think it's good for Bitcoiners to be really skeptical about new stuff on Bitcoin. That's one of Bitcoin's strengths, is that it doesn't change a whole lot, and that we know what it's going to do. We know what its issuance is going to be in 100 years. That's unbelievably important. But the other part of Bitcoin is that it's open and it's consensus, and we've defined rules. And right now, within Bitcoin's rule set, you can put inscriptions on it without breaking Bitcoin's core consensus. And that was echoed a lot early in late January as these things are taking off. And some of the Bitcoin core, very smart, like adversarially minded cryptographers are discussing, should ordinals be allowed or not. The consensus was, there is nothing we can do about this without breaking Bitcoin's core permissionless attribution. So I like to say this. I think ordinals and inscriptions are a net good. I think they're actually so much a net good that I'm fine with personally endorsing it. But also, I think it actually is a testament to the fact that even Bitcoin's strongest adherents, the most hardcore Bitcoiners, the people who only think about Bitcoin, that's the only thing they can talk about, even they do not control Bitcoin. Even they also cannot predict some things that will happen to it. And so I think this was a very good example of a way that Bitcoin is truly permissionless and not controlled by anyone, even the people who use it most. That's how powerful it is.
In some ways, we all have to bend the knee to the inevitability of Bitcoin. And that, I guess, brings me to that new question, which is more of a two-part question. Has this new development, with ordinals and inscriptions, was it inevitable to happen on Bitcoin? I mean, looking back at now how all this has kind of evolved, maybe eventually this was probably going to happen in the future. And let's talk security. I mean, because all of this may be helping Bitcoin's security. I mean, as far as the blockchain goes, is that viable there?
So it's a lot of questions.
Oh, okay. We can break it up.
Was it inevitable? I think something like it was inevitable. Was it inevitable that we start numbering Satoshis? I don't think so. Was it inevitable that we would put stuff on Bitcoin's block space? Yes. And that's because if we think Bitcoin is going to be very valuable in the future, and Bitcoin is going to have a high fee rate in the future that surpasses the block subsidy, that basically means that Bitcoin, which can only do 7 transactions a second, is going to it's going to get really expensive as people compete for those transactions. Then we're going to use every part of the block, kind of like, the Native Americans use every part of the buffalo, because it's so valuable that we would learn and discover how to utilize it fully. So it was inevitable that we would always use Bitcoin's data availability, which we're doing right now. We're putting JPEGs on Bitcoin. So I think that was inevitable. It's funny because a lot of people think, well, ordinals just were invented in January, but actually, if we go back, we can see people talking about this exact same type of numbering scheme a decade ago in 2011 and 2012. In fact, this exact numbering scheme was actually proposed by Charlie Lee, who invented Litecoin back in 2012. And so, what Casey, the person who is considered the inventor of ordinals, he often says that he just kind of rediscovered it. And so, it's a story very much like Bitcoin, where you take a lot of different ideas and you combine them. And that is what, like, just the combination of all of them and kind of releasing them into the world, that becomes its own beast and its own thing and its own ecosystem. And so Ordinals has kind of followed a very similar path to Bitcoin. And that actually has a lot of what I'm working on right now is on what's kind of the governance and rule set of how Ordinals work, similar to how just today we're still talking about the rule set and the consensus that underpins Bitcoin.
Yeah, so you basically, and I mean, hey, I might be using a little tongue in cheek here, but I mean, we talk about Hal Finney and all them back in the early days of Bitcoin. Maybe we'll be talking about Charlie Spears in the early days of Ordinals.
Hey, it feels like it.
Yeah.
It really does. One thing I've been doing is kind of writing down some thoughts, because even though it's chaotic, I want to like remember these this time. Because if you go back and you listen to like what early Bitcoiners were talking about, a lot of the same things they were talking about still ring true today, and we can learn a lot about that. And I think a lot of things we've talked about kind of inside the world of ordinals the past 6 months will ring true in the years to come. Yeah, I could
definitely see that happening. I mean, with all this activity, there's people, complaining about, or I mean, celebrating too, but Bitcoin degens are pulling a lot of people from the general cryptocurrency space and bringing them maybe back into Bitcoin. You'll hear things like they came for the JPEGs, but they stayed for the sound money. I mean, do you have a take on that?
That is my take. That people come for the JPEGs and stay for the sound money.
Were you the one that said that? Because I wrote notes on that in Miami. I think that came out of your mouth.
I think I get credited for that, but I don't get. But I don't know. I just get so excited because I have been trying, and you've been along here with me, been trying to educate people for years. And one of the core things if you are a Bitcoiner, you should think about how you can run a full node. And I've been trying to help people do this for years. It's kind of like pulling teeth. And in a weekend in February, I helped more people install and run a full node than I have in my entire decade-long career. And the number of Bitcoin nodes, which is kind of a good measure of the health of the Bitcoin network, the number of Bitcoin nodes has increased the fastest it's ever increased in Bitcoin's life, both by raw amount and by percentage of nodes referenced to before. So this is one of the coolest things. You can try to say, oh, ordinals are bad. Ordinals are dumb, but the reality is ordinals have brought thousands of new people. Actually, the number is something more like 150,000 new people to Bitcoin. I've done the math. I've done some analysis on it. And about 10% of those people, at least, have been running full Bitcoin nodes. And they're paying Bitcoin fees. I'll let you ask the question about Bitcoin mining and everything, but this is generating considerable revenue for the Bitcoin network, which is a great thing.
We're talking about more nodes, which is basically like the puzzle checkers, right? And then you got the basically quote unquote puzzle solvers, the miners who are, you're talking about higher mining fees. And I know they're probably loving it. Obviously this probably helps with the whole consensus mechanism of Bitcoin, but then also, security. But, are there congestion concerns? I mean, what's going on here?
So, one man's congestion is another man's healthy adoption. It's kind of like, what did Yogi Berra say? There's nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. It's kind of like that. What is the purpose of Bitcoin? Bitcoin is to be used. And because we've put like hard, constraints around how much Bitcoin can scale at the base layer. We know, and we've talked about this, that number is going to get more expensive to transact on Bitcoin. We want Bitcoin to be fully utilized by the participants. That is going to be a measure of its health. And so we might call it congestion now, but I actually like to say that Bitcoin is starting to actually be used at scale. And that's So I don't really think of it as congestion.
Well, I think it's all, good points that you're bringing up there. I mean, what are some of the, I guess, the strongest critics of all of this? What's their biggest complaint?
I think the strongest critics, man, I think most of the critics are very short-sighted and very prideful and, quite frankly, very myopic and hypocritical. People say it's like putting graffiti on Bitcoin. I'm like, do you want Bitcoin to be permissionless? Do you want Bitcoin to be uncensorable by nation states? There's two good criticisms of it that I like. One, which is kind of esoteric, which is it can bloat what's called Bitcoin's UTXO set, in that's a number of unspent transaction outputs. That's something that lives in the RAM of the node and can get really, really clunky to use. That's very different than what's called the Bitcoin like transaction history and full index. So this is a separate thing. Nobody's really talking about the UTXO set bloat. And then the other one is ultimately Bitcoin is a cultural consensus. And when you bring new people in, they bring the same, they bring their own ideas and their own perspectives. And when you have people coming in who do not know Bitcoin's history of how we got here, why did we make some of the decisions we did about Bitcoin block size, or about transaction speed, or about even things like proof of work? Why is Bitcoin even mined? When new people come in, they bring their own opinions, and it almost becomes this game of having to constantly fight the same battles you thought you won a decade ago. And so I think that's a good criticism, is that the cultural component of people who use Bitcoin is going to change and evolve, and it can bring new challenges, but it's also going to bring new solutions. Imagine when, if you want Bitcoin to be this revolutionary tool that takes over the world and becomes the unit of account for everybody, it's way better if 5 billion people use it than 5 million people. And so how do we get to that pathway? You can't just convince everyone to be this sovereign citizen, Ayn Randian Austrian economics person. Most people are just not going to change their views on things. But what you can do is get people to change how they use the technology around them. And they're just going to use Bitcoin for whatever purpose they want. And in some way, this is kind of an acknowledgement that no man controls Bitcoin. Nobody does. And that's what's beautiful about it. And that's why it's strong, because nobody can stop it. Not a government, not people, not a corporation. That's why it's cool.
So, okay, I don't know if this has any correlation or uniqueness, or just it's a coincidence. Maybe it's not even a viable question to ask, but you have things like Lightning Network, the second layer solution that's really picking up. And a lot of people talk about this idea that if Bitcoin is becoming this world reserve asset or currency or money, that most of the transactions are going to take place on that second layer and then eventually be settled on the main blockchain.
Yep, I would agree.
And I would concur with that. But does that evolution of Bitcoin and its use as a money change anything or help anything if ordinals start taking off?
It's really hard to evaluate that. One of the things is that Lightning, as this faster settlement solution, a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin's layer 1, it's been adopted, but it's not been adopted like nearly as much as we think it should be. And that's a huge like red flag for if you want Bitcoin to scale. Are people actually using it? So interestingly enough, by making Bitcoin's base layer kind of more expensive and harder to use, that means people are going to actually have to start using things like the Lightning Network. It's driving Lightning adoption.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to make the point. Like, that's why I think it may be unique, because as ordinals take off, or all this stuff, inscriptions and stuff takes off, incentivizing people to use Lightning, that might be a good thing. Yeah,
and the thing is, like, because we brought 100,000 new people, and probably double that actually, because we brought all these new people in. These are people who didn't own Bitcoin before, really. Bitcoin, like legacy Bitcoiners, are not really doing this. This is.
Oh, I think we lost Charlie there. We got an internet connection problem.
Top of 2021. This is totally different. This is hundreds of thousands of new people all buying Bitcoin and starting to use it at the bottom of a market. Imagine what happens is they learn more about Bitcoin, how to use it, how to use things like Lightning or Taps, Taro, RGB, Frost, Mutiny Wallet, Arc. These are like all really cool things, and they're an abundant ways of like diversifying how Bitcoin's used. And when you have a hungry new use case and a hungry new cohort of people who want to use it, maybe they come for the JPEGs, but they're staying for the revolution.
Yeah, and I love the fact that more people are becoming node users or running a node. That's really good for Bitcoin.
Yep.
But guys, we got a couple seconds before we got to go to break here. But man, this has been a good conversation. So stay put. I want you guys, if you're listening on the radio, call a friend, tell them to tune in because we got more to cover. And if you're listening online, hey, comment, subscribe, give us a like, share, because this is a new spot, a new thing for Bitcoin. It's going to continue to evolve, and we're going to dive more into this coming right up into the next segment. So stay put. We'll see you guys here in just a minute.
If you're the kind of person that likes to drive a lot and your car is a little older and out of the normal warranty, keep listening. What's going on underneath the hood of your car? If your car is out of warranty, you're at risk of expensive repair bills. Now, for a couple of dollars a day, you can get an extended protection plan for your car. You love your car, so why not give it a little extra care and make sure if something goes wrong, your bank account is safe. Literally, for a couple of dollars a day, you can give yourself peace of mind that you've purchased a top-tier vehicle repair coverage plan. Call the Auto Protection Network right now and ask how you could save an additional $500 on your policy.
800-987-0618. 800-987-0618. 800-987-0618. That's 800-987-0618.
Come on, you watch the news. Be prepared to pay more taxes. Then if you owe back taxes or haven't filed in a few years, get ready. The IRS, the largest collection agency in the world, will be coming after you with the power to collect taxes by any means they want to. Hey, they can freeze your bank account, your passport, even padlock your business. Good times. Look, if the IRS claims you owe them $5,000 or more in back taxes and they're coming after you, don't panic. Call my friends at Get a Tax Lawyer first. Their job is to negotiate with the IRS and save you money. They're experts at it. That's all they do, and you can trust them. In some cases, they have reduced a $50,000 tax bill to less than $1,000. If you owe the IRS $5,000 or more in back taxes, call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-732-9635. 800-732-9635.
What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Welcome back, America. That's right. It's round 3 of America's Bitcoin-focused radio show, one of the only ones. And whether you're a Bitcoin lover, newbie, or expert, I want to welcome all of you guys. And I don't care who you are, what you're doing, and where you are. We made this show for you, for everybody, because here we're trying to talk and educate about Bitcoin, the ideas of Bitcoin, how Bitcoin is changing the world, and some of them are kind of esoteric, some of them are kind of out there, but new things are developing all the time to some degree, whether it be people talking about new ideas, and then over the last 6 months, we've seen this real emergence of this thing called Ordinals and inscriptions that are happening on Bitcoin's blockchain. And you may be familiar with that term NFTs or non-fungible tokens. It's definitely in the same vein here in the conversation. And I hope you've been tuning in. If you haven't, go back and go to Spotify, go to iTunes, go to Google Podcasts, whatever. You listen to the whole thing, because our guest today, he's been unpacking some of these new ideas that even I myself am wrapping my head around because it's so new to the Bitcoin ecosystem. But I'm not going to waste a lot of time because this segment is shorter. So today on the line, I have regular contributor, my resident Bitcoin miner, and now my resident major ordinal influencer. His name is Charlie Spears, and maybe one day, we'll be looking back, and when we look at the genesis of this ordinal movement, maybe we'll be talking about Charlie Spears. Charlie, because this is radio, hey, just one more time, let people know who you are and who you and what you do and who you work for.
Yep, it's kind of crazy to be here, Matt. We've been doing this for a few years. I've been mining Bitcoin for longer than those few years, and then lately I've been kind of consumed in this new idea called Ordinals. And in addition to running my mining business here in Oklahoma, I also now work for a Bitcoin mining pool, Luxor, the second largest mining pool in North America. And I work kind of as this like R&D crack lab group on as part of the company to figure out how we can build on ordinals and all things Bitcoin block space.
Okay, well, somebody might be listening, and they have been listening to this whole episode. They're like, man, I kind of get some of these ideas. Maybe it's still kind of, got to marinate a little bit more. Where would somebody go if they really wanted to dive into this ordinal stuff and learn? Because, are there good resources out there? This is all kind of new stuff. So how does one really dive deep into it?
That's a really good question. Because it's so new, there's not a lot of good resources, and probably half those resources I would say are pretty misleading. It's probably not that great to go on YouTube. However, because I've been here this long, I've actually worked with people to produce really good resources. The first thing I would point you to is a website called docs.ordinals.com. There's your basic explanation, docs.ordinals.com. And then I would point you to a site that I work on, ordinalhub.com, and go to our blog section. There we have your basics about what exotic or rare sats are, how inscriptions are made, and just links to all the good stuff, as well as just ecosystem news and interviews. So those two places are going to be the best. Remember this, if you're still trying to wrap your head around Bitcoin, it might be harder to wrap your head around what ordinals are. But then again, maybe you don't have to totally understand how Bitcoin works, and you can just jump right to using things that are built on ordinals. That's kind of the beauty here. It's kind of like the American dollar, where like people just kind of use it. A lot of people don't think about it. That's a blessing and a curse. It means that for people like me and Matt, who we care about certain fundamental issues with the US dollar and other fiat currencies, it's hard to explain why. But at the same time, it's like most people just want to use it. It's a tool. Ordinals are a thing you can just jump in and do, and it's broadly understandable because you can trade cool digital assets. And I just get excited because most people may have not touched Bitcoin otherwise. Maybe they want Bitcoin because they want to have their monkey JPEG, and I'm not going to look that user too closely in the mouth because that's a gift horse if I ever saw it.
Okay, well, maybe, here's a question that I'm going to ask for myself as well. If I wanted to get my hands on a rare Satoshi that has some kind of historical value, maybe I want to, get involved in the ordinal stuff. Is there a marketplace in which I can do so? And B, how do I safely store them? Are there wallets and tools to consider?
Oh, man, Matt, you just asked a doozy of a question.
Okay,
The short answer is it's really technical and very arcane. It's very obscure how to do this. Basically, you kind of have to already be an advanced Bitcoin user in order to actually secure these rare Satoshis. But the thing is we can help you. We at Ordinal Hub and Luxor actually specialize in kind of holding people's hands and helping them store and select and procure these. And we sell them as well. So, Yeah, basically, like you got to go to like one of those like hardcore, like techie Bitcoin wallet software things. You've got to use it in a way they didn't intend. And then there's no marketplace. You have to like OTC trade with people these special sats. That's how early we are. It really does feel like it's 2018 and the word NFT hasn't been invented yet. And we're trying to trade these digital assets back and forth. That's kind of like the comparison here.
Wow, I love it. I love it. Well, if people have been listening to this episode and they're like, man, I really like what Charlie has to say. I'd like to follow his work, kind of follow how he's kind of unfolding in all this ordinal space. Where would they go to, I guess, follow you?
Twitter, my username on Twitter is CB Spears. And then for anything that I do in Ordinals, you can go to ordinalhub.com, ORDINALHUB.com, and follow all of our resources and links and social media there. That's going to be the best place. That's like kind of a one-stop shop. So yeah, I just get so excited. This is the freshest Bitcoin's felt for me in a long time. I care so much about Bitcoin, and I've made it kind of my life's work, just like you, Matt. And this is one of the most exciting things I've seen happen in it. And so I just couldn't be happier to be a part of it as well.
Which leads me into one of my final answers, because we've got about 2 or 3 minutes before we got to go to break here. So we may have to be quick. But what is, I mean, obviously this is a new breath of life, into Bitcoin for you. What's got you the most excited about this ordinal space and inscriptions?
It's going to be a little esoteric, as are most answers, but basically, I don't think the big story here are JPEGs on Bitcoin. I actually think the big story is everybody's been trying to develop what are called decentralized IDs on chain, and some of these things are corporate backed and I think fundamentally evil. But what happens is when we give Satoshis a number, they become a native DID system on Bitcoin. And this is something without the development of a protocol or of like a private company. This is not some people going and scanning people's eyeballs like WorldCoin. No, this is a DID system which has existed on Bitcoin since day one. We've only just discovered that it existed. And so I think the big narrative here for Ordinals is actually in a decentralized, neutral, uncontrolled DID system. That's the big idea.
So a neutral, decentralized way to verify my own identity to the world?
Yeah, if you own the ordinal, it's you. It's a pseudonym. It's a number. You can associate yourself with it if you will, and you can do certain things with it. I think this is the thing I'm most excited about, and I think we won't really see this be developed at scale for a few years. But I think looking back, we'll see like, oh, that's what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, and especially with the world of deep fakes and scammers and all this other stuff. I mean,
yep.
if we're going to have some kind of digital ID, might as well be on Bitcoin because it's decentralized, controlled by nobody. I like that idea.
People said we couldn't do X on Bitcoin. They said we couldn't put NFTs on Bitcoin. Well, guess what? We did better than that. We put something which is an order of magnitude better than NFTs. Your data actually lives on Bitcoin, and nobody can stop that. People have put Tiananmen Square Man on Bitcoin. They put the Tibetan flag on Bitcoin. People have said Taiwan is an independent nation in big, bold letters. And that information exists all across the communist Chinese state, and nobody can do anything about it. That is the power of Bitcoin beyond just money. It's uncensorable information. That's why Bitcoin is special.
I love it. That's a great place to close. Beautifully said, Charlie. As always, you're such a great orator. I need to close out this show, but guys, if you're listening and you loved what you heard, oh my gosh, please come back next week because we want you to learn, want you to grow with us. And until next time, my friends, I need you to consider this. Learn, do your homework, read, watch videos, follow Charlie, follow me, because I want to prepare each and every one of you for this new digital age, because Bitcoin is changing the world. It already is, but we'll see you guys same time, same place. Adios.